Here's the brief news from the world over this week. In a move that was expected to come after October's forthcoming Synod on the Family, Pope Francis has radically overhauled the Church's annulment process. Announced on Tuesday, the Church's 300-year-old practice of adjudicating the nullity of marriage has been streamlined. In 2 letters, Pope Francis, on his own initiative, has created a new, simplified, fast-track annulment procedure. It empowers local bishops to decide whether or not a marriage is valid. Annulments will no longer require an automatic review of any ruling of nullity, so long as both spouses agree that they want their marriage annulled. Annulments, which currently take more than a year or much longer, must now be finished within 45 days in most cases. That's faster than most civil divorces. Also, among the reform measures, a lack of faith can now be cited as a reason for nullity. In addition, nominal fees needed to obtain an annulment have been eliminated. In the publishing of the new rules, Pope Francis reaffirmed the indissolubility of marriage, but he also added that charity and mercy demand that the Church, as mother, be close to her children who consider themselves separated. The overall goal, he said, is the salvation of souls. The new rules go into effect on December 8th, the beginning of the Year of Mercy. Meanwhile, top Vatican Cardinal Gerhard Mueller warned this past week that the bishops of his native Germany are leading the Church to schism over questions involving marriage and human sexuality. Speaking in Regensburg, the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith compared the tendency of church leaders to divide doctrine from pastoral practice to be not unlike the abuses that led to the Protestant split from the Church in 1517. Mueller specifically called out his fellow bishops for pushing to allow divorced and remarried Catholics to receive Holy Communion. He also warned that the attempt to redefine marriage is an ongoing challenge the Church faces. Talk of schism has escalated since the head of the German Bishops' Conference and top papal advisor, Cardinal Reinhard Marx, said earlier this year that each episcopal conference is responsible for the pastoral care of their culture. We are not a subsidiary of Rome, he said, and cannot wait for the Vatican Synod to decide. More on marriage, annulments, and the upcoming Synod in our next segment. Europe's migration crisis is turning into a political crisis. As hundreds of thousands of migrants pour into Europe, the President of the European Commission is calling on its member nations to legalize the migration of those fleeing the Middle East and Northern Africa. Jean-Claude Juncker highlighted the crisis during his State of the Union address on Wednesday. He's proposing compulsory minimum quotas for the Commission's member nations. Nigel Farage, a member of the British Parliament and leader of the UKIP party, objected.
I have a feeling that the British people will warm to you on a personal level, but to suggest that getting rid of a few EU regulations is going to change our minds, sorry, unless you give Mr Cameron back control and discretion over our borders, the Brits within the course of the next year will vote to leave.
Meanwhile, there's also a bit of disagreement within the Church about the migration crisis. A day after Pope Francis made a blanket appeal to the faithful to welcome immigrants, insisting it was a moral duty, Hungarian Bishop László Kisrigo said the Pope is wrong and greatly misinformed on the situation. The bishop explained that the influx of predominantly Muslim migrants is an invasion, and they're not refugees. He said he instead agrees with the assessment of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who says the inflow of migrants poses a direct threat to Europe's Christian identity. More on all of this later in the show. On Capitol Hill this week, Congress held its first hearing looking into the Planned Parenthood fetal harvesting scandal in the wake of several damning undercover videos. On Wednesday, the House Judiciary Committee examined federal laws that address fetal tissue research, but the hearing quickly turned into a highly partisan debate on abortion. Democratic Congressman Gerald Nadler accused the committee of attempting to smear Planned Parenthood. He compared it to the McCarthy hearings of the 1950s. Arizona Republican Trent Franks tried to stay above the fray.
In spite of all the political noise, protecting these little babies and their mothers is not a Republican issue, and it is not a Democrat issue. It is a basic test of our humanity and who we are as a human family.
Also at stake, numerous House Republicans are looking to end the federal funding of Planned Parenthood. They're demanding that Congress not fund federal agencies starting October 1st unless Planned Parenthood's money is terminated. An impasse could lead to a government shutdown. Planned Parenthood receives more than $500 million each year of federal and state government money, more than 1/3 of its $1.3 billion annual budget. And the Kentucky County Clerk jailed for refusing to issue marriage licenses to gay couples due to religious objections was released from jail this week. She was greeted by hundreds of supporters as she emerged from incarceration. Kim Davis had been in custody since September 3rd on a contempt of court charge for repeatedly refusing court orders to issue licenses to same-sex and separate-sex couples. She cited, quote, God's authority and her deeply held religious views that gay marriages are sinful. Upon her release, federal judge David Bunning warned Davis not to obstruct the granting of licenses by her deputy clerks. Kim Davis returns to her elected position of Rowan County Clerk next week. We'll keep you updated on this story. And with Pope Francis's arrival in the U.S. less than 2 weeks away, the Church is showing signs of financial strain there. In addition to the estimated $3 billion of payouts in sex abuse payments, a shortfall in the pension fund for aging Catholic priests threatens to make the situation worse. According to a review of financial records by Reuters, the pension fund took a $2 billion hit in 2014, which will present a serious problem when thousands of priests retire in the next 5 years. Since Francis's election in 2013, the Vatican, as well as the U.S. Church, have enacted financial reforms and cost-cutting measures to stop the bleed. And finally, on a much happier note, the monks of Norcia are breaking all kinds of records. This week, they became the first Catholic group to sit in the #1 slot on Billboard's classical charts for 14 weeks. Only the Mormon Tabernacle Choir has done anything near that. Their Benedictus CD and the classic chant therein are drawing new audiences internationally. Congrats to our favorite beer-making, chanting monks. It's incredible music.